Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. And keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy.
All right, folks, here we are on Tuesday, December 17th. We're going to take a look at 5 stocks that have something to do with EV charging. ChargePoint, EVGO, BLNK, Tesla, and NIO. We're going to go in that order. I'll do my best to put the timestamps as the first pinned comment in case you just want to jump to any particular tickers. Now for each ticker, we're going to start here in the Webull chart. We'll take a couple of looks at it from this angle, and then we'll flip over to the Think or Swim study, and we'll take a look at it there. Some will probably make a little more sense on Webull, some will probably make a little more sense on Think or Swim, and we'll just sort of unpack it as we go. So ChargePoint, obviously one of the sadder stories in this group, though there are a couple. We see this big sell-off here that had marked many months ago. And since then, it has just continued to bleed down further. A recent low of 105. I have the critical level of 112 here, which is right around where it's wrestling at the moment. If it can't double bottom right in this range, like 112 down to 109 or so, it's going to be a tough go. If it flips and confirms 112 range from support to resistance, I think it's going to have a hard time. Now, if you think it's a good deal for other reasons than the chart at this price point, that's for you to decide. I'm focused on the chart, and that's all that this video is about. So just keep that in mind as well. But if it does put this in, it could be a nice opportunity for a double bottom if it does start to get some legs. And if it does, I have 123, 129, 142, 149. I mean, it just has a bunch of stickiness in this approach to 2, including just shy of 2, which is 194, and just over 2, 204. It does have this gap that's not yet filled. That would take it up above 165. What was the low on this day? 166. So gap fill up to 166 if it wants to do that. But it is a long, tough history for ChargePoint. And so I would just sort of say, in the vast scheme of things, keep that in mind. Now, EMA wise, we'll see if anything interesting is happening here. If it does get some legs, 183 EMA is something that I always harp on. That's right now situated up in the 170s. And so I would look for any contact with that. But yeah, not even making any contact with the short-term EMAs at the moment. So not a tremendous look for it there. On the Think or Swim side of things, we had a trigger and fire back here that didn't result in anything, and then a re-trigger and a refire that also didn't result in anything. So TTM squeeze not doing us much of any favors there. Phase oscillator just still in compression, and even the ATR levels here is just hanging out at the base ATR month over month over month. I mean, you look back here, even you see it's just pinned between this blue and this yellow. These are call and put triggers, and in between is the base ATR, and all that it's doing is a little bit up and a little bit down. Nothing tremendous, but you can always sort of see the blue and the yellow pretty distinctly because it's not making any major moves in either direction. But it is sort of on this slow burn down, as we see, with a few blips of jumpiness in between. And could this be one of them? Maybe, but it is a tough road for ChargePoint at the moment, at least from a chart perspective. EVGO, big gap down today. Actually, this is the first time I'm seeing this. I don't know what happened to EVGO. This isn't a news video. They have a share offering at 5. So not a great look when it was up in the 6s yesterday. So that's going to be a tough day. So I guess good thing I had put in a bunch of levels here. Now I had charted a course up to 884 here. That's going to be a tough look at this point. But we do now have, and we're going to result in, I have no doubt, a big gap here, right? So there's going to be some gap here to fill. Will it do it? I don't know. There's still a gap back here. There's a gap that it's now into from down here, and that gap, it would fill that gap at $4. So if it comes down to fill that gap, that's where that would happen. On its way there, I just have a couple of really important support levels, right? Really strong levels. There's certainly some others, but I tried to not put the ones that seemed a little more weak into the mix because, we have a lot of stocks to get through and I don't want to look at a bunch of cluttered charts. So 429 basically, it may find some support there, and then if it does head for the gap fill and it slips even further because of the trajectory, 376 may be something to look at. Now, again, I don't have it on here, but if it does that gap fill at 4, you might find that, just below 4, it finds some footing, 397, 395, something like that, and sort of completes the gap fill and starts to work its way back up. It's obviously still a pretty far distance away from that. It's another over 10% away from that at the moment. So it would be another, steep elevator down if it were to do that. But this is a tough look today for sure for EVGO. Now, if it gets through 376, I have 321 and 297 on the chart. So that's that look there. Surprise, surprise. Okay, so I was just harping on with ChargePoint about the 183 EMA. I wasn't harping on, but I was saying I always harp on the 183 EMA. That's right what EVGO is wrestling with. So even on a day where it kicks off the day down like 26%, it's putting in a daily candle that is sort of just wrestling. It has the 183 EMA, looks like it's stabbing it in the heart, right? If you look that this is the head, these are the feet, it's stabbing it right in the heart. So take for that what you will, but this is a critical level and moment for EVGO. Can it hold that 183 EMA, which right now is situated at 480? And so if it flips now, it's a little bit below it for now, but the question is, it can wrestle with a level, sort of like it's wrestling with all these levels up here, right? It's a little bit above, a little bit below, a little bit above, a little bit below, but it's not doing any strong reconfirmation of support or resistance and moving off it. It's just sort of weaving slightly above, slightly below. So 480, right now it's putting in price points in the high 460s. That to me is going to just look like it's a wrestling level. But if it flips it from struggling with that level to resistance, it's going to be a tough go for EVGO. It might have a hard time not filling that gap all the way through to 4, but we'll see. But to me, this is probably the most compelling look at EVGO at the moment, given what's taking place and the quick drawdown there. Just putting and the nice thing about the EMAs being the cleanest look is it's a nice clear chart. It's not cluttered. You take everything else off and it's just these 4 lines to look at, right? Here on the Thinkorswim study, it was wrestling base ATR coming into December, and now big gap down straight through the put trigger, right? The put trigger is this yellow line. Now, if it does go the full -1 ATR for December, that puts it at 422. So it puts it pretty concretely in that gap, headed toward potentially 4 and a gap fill. And we'll see how these shuffle around, because these will certainly move, right? These are dynamic. So you saw the first trigger candle getting put in yesterday, and TTM squeeze indicator may be having a really good call out here at the moment, having this trigger candle come in yesterday, and then today it's running, it's not running, it's receding, hot and heavy. But for my money, this is the one that I would keep an eye on for the time being. If it either finds legs or support above that EMA, the 183 EMA, or it loses it. Now, BLNK, we have the EMAs up, so we'll just start here. Pinned at the moment under all of the short-term EMAs. So again, not a great look. It sort of struggled with them back here after a long term, right? Up here it was rejecting off that 183, and then it lost that and got huge distance. And so then the tactic is, can it flip these short-term EMAs from resistance, or not from resistance, from bearish formation to a fully bullish formation? And it tried to do that here. It got the ever so brief bullish crossover, but I mean, these weren't compelling crossovers, right? These are just EMAs kind of laying on top of each other and sort of shuffling positioning a little bit, but it's not a strong, compelling crossover like the down crossover, right? Like the bearish crossover here. That's a distinct more steep crossover. And again, right here, right, that's a more compelling crossover than these just kind of laying on top of each other. And so it's going to have to, make some headway there before this 183 comes into play again. But it's certainly has a tough road as it pertains to the EMA setup. Now, on the levels that I have on the chart, there's this downtrend resistance that, I could trace back to July. I don't know if maybe it could go back further. Maybe it could even sync up with this guy. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But it is pretty steep downtrend resistance. So that is going to be the critical break to my eye, right? Get a break, get some distance from it. Just be cautious of it doing something like this, right? It gets a break, but it's not really a break. It's wrestling with the level and it comes right back down through it, and it nets out, amounts to nothing. And it took a day of being plus 12.66% to even try to make that happen. And then it follows it up just with a -4, -1, -5, -2.5, and then it's right back down there again. So downtrend resistance for sure, critical. Slight resistance level slightly to the upside, 164 basically. Support 148. Those are the nearest levels that I see. Below that, 125, which draws way back many, many, many months. I'm not going to make you nauseous by scrolling left and showing you that, but there is a 125 swing low many, many, I guess, years ago at this point. If it can get some movement above that 164 level, 185, 225, and so on. See if there's anything interesting happening here. I doubt it, but maybe on the think or swim side of things. Sort of looks like ChargePoint. A little bit up, a little bit down, but mostly month over month over month. This is the month of September, October. You can see it's just situated between the call trigger and the put trigger, just hitting that base ATR month over month over month. Nothing compelling happening, having a few blips, a few jumps here and there, but mostly just a slow, steady bleed down, right? Sometimes taking, sort of jumping off a cliff, but then just bleeding down further, jumping off a cliff, having a little bit of a run, and then, losing it again. So, and then it amounts to this, just sort of situated in between the call and the put trigger, nothing compelling happening. Yes, it is triggering right now on the TTM squeeze indicator. I don't know if that will amount to much of anything. Doesn't have, let's see, there was a lengthy trigger and fire here. Maybe eventually you could say that it kicked off this rundown, but I mean, even that's not that interesting. It didn't even get to the full -1 ATR, or even the initial ATR levels below the put trigger. So yeah, to me, for my money, this downtrend resistance is the place to be looking. Tesla. So Tesla, being the boom story that is at the moment, I put in some Fibonacci extension levels. So that gets us up. I don't know if there's any levels above this. No, but that's fine. It gives us enough to work with for the moment. And then if we stretch above 504.34, then we can go beyond that. But it looks like from a Fib extension level, at least, there's pretty clean run room here up to like an approach at 500. To me, 504, it's over 500, but that psychological 500 level is essentially what we're talking about. And sometimes that looks like people will get really sort of skittish as it approaches 500, right? That's where you might see some resistance around, say, 495 or 490, something like that. Or sometimes, like in this instance, I would say it's more that folks are going to get skittish once it gets over that psychological level. So they're going to be going, okay, we're really going to hold this over 500, or like, is this enough juice from the squeeze, and we're going to sort of let it go from here. So that's why I think that is situated at 504.34 from a sort of psychology perspective. That sounds like a weird term to use, but there are these, these clear-cut like $100 price points, right? $50 price points that folks just get sort of skittish around. And I think that's what that 504 is all about. If it does pull back 430, 33, so it does have a lot of space in here to develop some meaningful price action. If we scroll back and we look in the high 400s here, we have 414 there, but otherwise there's just not really anything to go off of. And so putting in some meaningful action in here will help clarify that if it does want to stay, sort of between 450 and 500. But for the time being, at least we have this sort of price marker at 504.34 and can work off of that. We can put in further extension levels if it gets there. Now, everything, nice movement off of the 183 here, right? It punched through, was able to get back quickly, and then came down and just found clear support there, and then just took off and just ran hog wild. And now it's getting quite extended above the 8 EMA, so all these short terms. But I mean, that does, just because it's extended doesn't mean that it can't just keep pumping and it can't keep just sort of flying. Volume getting pretty thin up in this range, certainly more impressive volume down through here, but it's sort of the first time that it's putting in volume through some of these price ranges, and so that's just going to be the case. And it clears out a bit when you zoom in, though. Sorry, I know this is probably nauseating to look at, but you do see some potential for maybe like an early floor here in the low 460s, and maybe even something here around 440. We do certainly get some nice potentials for some volume floors here in 425 down to 420, even down to 407, 405. So yeah, definitely in the lower quarter of the 400s, there's probably some volume floors, unless who knows what could happen that would drive it down that far. So it sort of depend on the catalyst sometimes, but that's what that looks like to me. On the think or swim side of things, yeah, it got through the call trigger and blew through that +1 ATR. That was just down at 405.31. We're way up. We're much closer to 500 now at this point, and this would bring it in above the January call trigger at the moment, which looks like it's situated around 495 or so. So it's kind of pressing that direction. If it does come in over the call trigger of 495 for January, that has a +1 ATR into the mid 500. So right now about 546, 547. So something to maybe keep an eye on there if it does keep the legs. On the phase oscillator down there at the bottom, we see it's obviously in a bullish phase, but it's up about 158 right now. So getting a little bit turned out on that one. We'll see if it wants to flip, if it gets up toward 200 or whatever, and take a little breath or not. But if you trace it back here, maybe a decent call out by the TTM squeeze indicator, few candle trigger, and then a fire, and it got a little bit roller coastery there. And certainly, it just depends. The time frame here is so long. It's like, sure, well, if you wait long enough, Tesla is going to have a large reaction. Okay. That shouldn't be sort of a mind-blowing concept there. NIO, having a bit of a hard time at the moment, keeps moving off of this downtrend resistance and having a hard time sort of holding footing at this 452. But to me, 452 down to 419, critical. If it came down to 419 and it got some support there and started to move off of it, to me wouldn't feel like the end of the world. Would feel much better at 452, not just because that's a higher price point from a bullish perspective, but it would mean that it doesn't need to swing lower than this previous near-in swing low that kicked off this attempt at that downtrend resistance. But it's going to need to get through this and get some space from it. If it does lose that 419, I have 390. If it does get through it, I have 519, 605. There's certainly some levels in between there, but I didn't, again, want to clutter the chart too much. It didn't seem necessary, but that downtrend resistance is the key critical component to my mind. And if you look at it from this view, you see the 183 coming in and just playing an important role here. 183, getting the wick off of that attempted push. That's where it broke through back in October and then got sucked right back down in and spent November well beneath the 183. So it's, it's not as far away as it's been recently, but it's not as close as it's been either. And so the short-term EMAs are still all in bearish formation. So it has a lot to work through to try to get another crack at the 183 EMA. So it's going to need some strong catalysts, some strong reason for, institutions and retail to come in. They were coming in really strong the last few days, coming out quite a bit so far today, it seems. But most folks still way underwater. Total profited shares as of yesterday's close, 5.35%. Ay, 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 ay. Now, if we look here on the think or swim side of things, here's what we have. Rejecting off of, here it looks like that rejection, instead of being off the 183, instead of being off of the downtrend resistance, here it's right off of the call trigger, right? So sort of a bunch of tough roads to get through for NIO there, and then just drawing right back down toward the base ATR at the moment, but it is putting in a lengthy trigger on the TTM squeeze indicator while it's in compression on the phase oscillator. So we'll see if that amounts to anything. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you had this trigger and fire, which hadn't, brought in a nice move from, it looks like, what is this? Down in the 3s, brought it up to well into the 7s. So yeah, good call out there. So maybe getting something here. Maybe it'll need a re-trigger and a refire. I don't know. But it is something to maybe keep an eye on, that it has gotten jumpy, in the near-ish past, in September, where it got pretty jumpy, and then it's, drawn back down since then. But putting in the retrigger, maybe there's something that it can stabilize around here and get some motion. Now, the question with the TTM squeeze indicator is always, a big move comes, which direction does it go? That could just as well be a big move down, so just keep that in mind. All right, folks, so I hope that your trading week is off to a good start. And as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.